Hi, my name's Emily, and today I'll be discussing the West Fork Watershed as part of a project for a water policy and regulation class at Marshall University. I'm currently getting over the flu, so please forgive if I start coughing and my voice sounding kind of off. With that being said, let's get started. So the West Fork Watershed is located in the north central part of the state and spans about 6 different counties. The river itself is about 100 miles long and covers a drainage area of a little less than 830 square miles. It drains into the unglaciated portion of the Allegheny Plateau. It's also a low gradient and slower moving river. Excuse me. Here is the actual picture of the West Fork River. As you can see, it's like a pretty wide, long, slow river. It is in the E grouping, designated by the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection. That just means it's kind of for industrial use. That means this watershed is either used for water transport, cooling water, power production, or industrial uses not covered by the previously listed uses. Like I said in the previous slide, excuse me, watershed is listed for industrial use. The listed land uses shown here on the left are abandoned mine lands, which is what the AML stands for, barren land, cropland, forest and forestry, grasslands, mining, quarry, oil and gas production, pasture, urban and residential areas, and water. The table also has it broken down in percentages and area coverage. I might talk a little bit about that more later. The criteria for the watersheds shown on the right, which I will also talk more about later. That's just the water quality criteria for like the highest ones of concern. As you can see, it's for dissolved aluminum, total iron, chloride, pH, and fecal coliform bacteria. So as of the 2016 West Virginia Integrated Water Quality Monitoring and Assessment Report for the watershed, 114 streams and 1 lake are 303D listed, and that's just for the West Fork watershed as a whole. Obviously, this is just the start of the list. I couldn't fit all of it on the slide. Most of the streams are listed for the entire length, and CNA biological is listed as the contaminant. I'll talk more about what that means in a little bit. So on to what this PowerPoint is really about and what it's for, TMDLs. TMDLs are the total maximum daily load, and basically what that means is that is the maximum allowable pollutant loading for a water body to comply with the water quality standards set by the Environmental Protection Agency and the state of West Virginia. They also distribute the load among pollutant sources and provide a basis for actions needed to bring the water qualities back up to standard. The data for this TDML is available in the US EPA approved report for the watershed provided by the WVDEP website. The table on the right here is taken from the report and shows where they got the data from for making the TMDL. It has the watershed physiographic data, monitoring data, and regulatory or policy information, as well as more specific types of information and where the data for those came from. So as you can see, like the stream network, the land use, aerial photography, counties, cities, soils, rainfall, temperature, wind speed, dew point, and then where they got the data from to make this TMDL. So the methods used to make this one in particular include the West Virginia Stream Condition Index, stressor identification, and a couple different modeling techniques. The West Virginia Stream Condition Index, also known as WVSCI, refers to biological monitoring. It involves sampling and quantifying the benthic macroinvertebrates that live in the stream. All that basically means is like the amount of bugs, snails, clams, aquatic worms, and crayfish, kind of like the, not to say icky things that live at the bottom of the creek, but they kind of are. Because these are like super sensitive to changes in water chemistry, they're usually pretty good indicators of stream health. Stressor identification, also known as SI, is the process of reviewing available information, forming and analyzing possible stressor scenarios, and implicating causative stressors. So that's like basically kind of just analyzing non-point sources for the most part. It also works closely with the modeling programs. The modeling used for this TMDL in particular was mostly the Mining Data Analysis System, MDAS. The system is designed to support TML development for areas affected by non-point and point sources, because it does provide a link between source contributions and in-stream response. It can simulate different flow regimes and pollutant loading variations. So you can kind of get in there and play around with it a little bit. So it's like, say you have low flow but high pollutant output, it'll make a scenario for that. It also has the advantage of little to no excuse me, limitations in terms of modeling size or upper limits of model operations. So like I said, if you have like low flow, high output, and you're trying to cover like most of the state of West Virginia, this modeling system should be able to do that. Sediment, total iron, dissolved aluminum, pH chloride, and fecal coliform bacteria were modeled using the MDAS system. So the recommendation for the criteria is shown in this table. The way it is enforced is by NPDES compliance, non-point source monitoring, and TMDL monitoring. I'll talk a little bit more about those later. But basically the recommendation is just like most TMDLs, just get it lower through permitting. Sorry. Through permitting and just like staying on top of monitoring. Onto the overall health of the watershed. If I'm being honest, I don't think it's that healthy. Like I mentioned earlier, as the 2016 West Virginia Integrated Water Quality Monitoring and Assessment Report, 114 streams in one of the lakes are 303D listed, and only 52 of the streams in the watershed actually have developed TMDLs. The ones that do have TMDLs pretty much only cover iron and fecal chloroform, and they mainly target mining and rural areas that don't have a proper sewage system. Only 2.15% of the area of the watershed is mining. I am including active and abandoned mine lands in that, and quarries. For such a small amount of land use, I find that odd that they are impacting the area so much. That being said, there is also a total of 93 combined sewage overflows, which are not properly monitored, which is another big issue, and that's not to mention the failing sewer systems or people dumping their sewage directly into the nearby stream for this watershed. So like I keep saying, 114 streams are on the 303D list, which just means they're impacted. Most are to have a TMDL developed by 2023, and the contaminant listed of concern for the vast majority of them is CNA biological. CNA biological means that the current conditions of the stream are not applicable for biological functions. This plays earlier into what I was talking about with the WVSCI sampling and quantifying the benthic macroinvertebrates that live in the stream. So this basically means over 100 streams in this watershed either do not have macroinvertebrates or have very few, and just the general health of the stream is very poor because it cannot support the said biological function. For the NPDES permits, I focused on the actual West Fork River rather than any of the streams or rivers that drain into the West Fork. There were a total of 6 businesses that had permits along the river. The Erie, Speltzer, and Greater Marion are the ones with the sewage permits. Harrison Power Station had an individual industrial permit. I couldn't really figure out if it was a stormwater or if it was just general industrial use, to be honest. And the other ones have an industrial stormwater permit. All the recent permits that I could find are just ones that are being reissued or have been reissued recently. However, the Lockheed Martin Aeronautics Company had their reissue denied. I couldn't really find any more information about that though. For the last informative slide, I looked at the major contaminants and the monitoring regimen for them. To no surprise, the major contaminants, like I was talking about earlier, are iron, dissolved aluminum, and pH, fecal coliform bacteria, and chloride. This, sorry, the sources for those contaminants are listed in that second column there, or at least what they proposed from like modeling and everything like that, where they came from. The monitoring regimen for most of these was staying on top of the permits and making sure they aren't being violated. Modeling also is playing a huge part in the monitoring of the TMDL, as they help with non-point sources, like I was talking about earlier. So basically all that means is like, well, it's raining more, so this abandoned mineland might be putting out more iron, so we need to watch what has a permit in this area that is involving iron. That's all I really have to say. Listed here are my resources. Sorry about the coughing, and thanks for sticking around. Have a nice day.